Welcome to Wilton Town Talks. I'm your host, Ryan Vermeulen.
And I'm Sean Kaliski.
And today we're here with Heather, Borden, and Hervé from Good Morning Wilton.
So Heather, you're a local mom, you're a local resident. So how did you go from being a mom to the owner of Good Morning Wilton?
It's a great question. I have actually been in the news business for more than 30 years. I started in New York in PR, I worked in magazines, I worked for a TV show, I worked in video production. So news has always been something that I've been really interested in. And I love pop culture and I love politics and I love finding out things. It's like you're curious. When we moved here, my kids were little. My kids are both graduated out of Wilton High School now. But you know, I wanted to get involved in the community somehow. And the way I knew best was in news coverage and news stories and everything. And at the time, there was old legacy media is what we call it, where there were a lot of newspapers and there were a few other websites that had just started. One of them was called Wilton Patch. And I approached the editor and I said, I know you don't know who I am, but I have some ideas for an opinion column. And things I want to write about town. And he didn't know who I was. He didn't know how I wrote. He said, great, so, you know, pitch me a couple columns. So I wrote a couple columns. He read them, and he said, great, you're going to write an opinion column twice a week. Now, can you imagine churning out opinions? But, you know, slowly, as you're a mom and a resident and engaged in the community, you start to form opinions about things. So we called it From the Driver's Seat, because moms and dads spend a lot of time in the driver's seat driving their kids back and forth. And you start to have, first of all, interesting conversations with your kids in the back. I mean, I'm sure you guys know that when you were growing up and you're in the back seat, you talk about stuff and your parents are listening and they love it. And then sometimes you have conversations with your parents because it's an easy way for us to get to know our kids better when we're not face to face. We feel like you tell us a little bit more and share with us a little bit more. And so the columns were about that. It was about things that I observed, looking out the front window, talking to my kids about, and just driving around town and making observations. And so I started doing that, and I wrote that column for about 3 years. And they asked me to write more, so I wrote for all of Fairfield County. They ran me in Westchester and a couple other counties. But then they changed. It became like really nasty in the comment section and on Facebook in the patch section. And they didn't like that because, you know, here we are, we're in Wilton, and that kind of thing can do a lot of damage to the community. And I asked the editors, can you change? But they were a big national company, and they said, no, this is the way we're going to do it. And they allowed people to be anonymous, and I didn't think that was fair. And so I said, well, if you're not going to change, then I'm going to do it myself. And it's kind of crazy. I mean, it's like starting a business. I'd never run my own business before. But I knew how to write, and I knew what I liked to read, and so I just started. You know, I got the domains. I found a website designer and somebody who could teach me WordPress, and I just started from there. And that was 12 years ago. I just celebrated 12 years. And from there, it kind of grew. It was supposed to be, if you see, like, good is all capitalized. It started with good stories about people in town to get to know your neighbor, to engage them with businesses, get them to understand the issues and politics in town. So that's the long-winded version of how it started.
You talk about how you want to write good stories. How do you find these stories to write about?
So, you know, like I said, I've been in this business for 30 some odd years. You kind of get a nose for news. I don't know if you've ever heard that expression, but you learn to understand what the community wants to hear, what's going on, what makes a news story. And you have to be an observer. You have to be somebody who notices things, is sort of a detective and starts to look for cues. But also people send me stories. There's always a form on the website, you know, contact me if you've got a good story, if you've got a tip. And people send me suggestions. Organizations also will send me press releases. Press releases, for anybody who doesn't know, is like it's like a one-page. It looks and smells like a news story, but it's written from the organization. And that helps me a lot because I can't be everywhere as one person. So we will, take those and kind of adapt them and run those stories. But it's making connections. It's always about, knowing who the people in town are, the business owners, the people who run organizations, the people at the schools, the people at town hall. It's just getting to know them and getting to know what is happening and what people in Wilton want to know about.
And a lot of residents have read these articles. I know I have, I know my parents have.
Yeah.
So what is like the main goal or mission that you want to,
Yep.
give out to the community?
So right now, freedom of speech is a very big topic that a lot of people are talking about. And a lot of that pertains to journalism. And I am a big believer in the public's right to know and the freedom of speech and the investigation into power. And what journalists do is we hold power to account. We are the eyes and ears of people, and if we see that something isn't being done right, we investigate it, we look into it, and we tell the story. We have a lot of principles of, you have to double check your facts, triple check your facts, make sure that the information you're getting is from a source and is right. But to me, especially as we've now lost one weekly newspaper that you guys don't even remember, I think it went out of business before you were born. We've got another newspaper that was bought by a big corporate company, and they don't even have a reporter in Wilton anymore. They don't send anybody to our election results. So what would Wilton do without news, without knowing what's happening at town hall, without people knowing how the town wants to spend our tax money? Those are things that residents need to know. I would love to do more. I would love to do more high school sports reporting. I would love to do more feature stories on individual people. It's hard, as more people have relied on Good Morning Wilton, we have to cover more and more and more. And a lot of people don't realize Good Morning Wilton is pretty much just me. I mean, I have a couple people that are freelance writers that, that now I'm able to, in the 12 years I've become able to pay people to write news and to report it and to know the news. They know a beat. They know, who's doing what at town hall because they've been covering it for a while. And, that's what drives me at the end of the day is just people, the public has a right to know what's happening. So.
Yeah, I could tell you put a lot of time and effort into writing these articles. So how long do you think it would take to, write one article?
Well, it depends. It depends on, each kind of article kind of takes a different things. Sometimes there'll be a meeting of the Board of Finance, 7 o'clock at night. And I really like for people to wake up, or at least the next day, find out what happened. And so that kind of article, you have to learn how to do quickly. You have to learn how to get to those, which, maybe you guys know, the who, what, when, where, why, and how. Those are the questions that you start with in journalism. So you got to get that out. You got to get the facts. So those, we'd like to turn those around overnight. There are some that are feature stories. Maybe there is an author coming to town at the library. And, that takes reading the book, reading up on the author, preparing, asking the questions. Sometimes we do add video like you guys do, and it takes a while to cut video together. So, I try and do that. So it depends. Right now I'm working on the election issue. And for that takes 2 months to put together because I'm interviewing over Zoom all of the candidates running for the 4 main boards. And we're asking them questions, and the interviews take about an hour. And then all those videos, first we cut a whole package, so if anybody wants to watch the whole hour long, they can watch the whole hour long. But then I chunk it up into question by question. So if somebody wants to see something about, let's say, development in Wilton Center, they can just listen to that question and hear the candidates' answers. And it helps people make a decision. We give them information also on where do you go to register, where do you go to vote. It's changing this year. All of the voting is taking place here at the high school. It used to be spread out between the 3 different schools. So people need to know, those basic details. So, it can take anywhere, anytime. I mean, sometimes there's a breaking news story. What was the last breaking news story? It was, somebody at town hall quit in the finance department. And then we've had, in the last couple months, we've had some very high-profile departures from people who worked for the town. And I got that news at about maybe 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I got that done in an hour and a half. Because I knew, from my old days in television news, like, I want to be first. I want to be first, and I want to be right. So I wanted to get that news out fast. I wanted people to know. So it could be any amount of time.
Yeah, and as you know that we're students,
Yes.
so how could students like us or students in the school get involved with your organization?
So a couple things. If there's anybody, I'm going to throw this one out there. If there's anyone who is interested in learning about news and getting involved in Good Morning Wilton, last year there was a senior who graduated last year, but if you remember a couple years ago, they cut a lot of money for the clubs in the high school. And right before they cut the money, she came to me and said, I want to start a Good Morning Wilton club at the high school. So that's still open. If there's, if people are starting clubs still, if anybody wants to get involved in news, there's that. If people write, people come to me with ideas. I've worked with kids in the high school before. There was a young woman who, when she was a junior, she said, I love reading and I love books, and I want to write book reviews. And I said, great, show me a sample of how you write. I thought her writing was fabulous. And she would, every month or twice a month, she would send me a book review, and she became our book reviewer. And she was a member of our team. She had a picture on the get to know us page on the site. A long time ago, there was a guy named Jackson Dill, and he loved doing the weather. He had dreamed since he was a kid. He wanted to be a meteorologist. And so he started writing up weather reports. And so every week I would publish his weather report. He gave me the graphics. He wrote everything. And then I said to him, Jackson, why don't you try and do a stand-up on video? And so he started doing his weekly weather report. Hi, this is Jackson Dill for Good Morning Wilton. On Monday, you're going to, and he started his whole, and he sent me the video report. We put it up there. And so he got to build a whole reel of clips of his experience on camera working for a real news website. He's now doing the weather at a TV station in Miami. Yeah. So, it's an opportunity for people to get real world experience, to get their face or their name or their writing out there in the real world. I mean, I do have standards. I do want people to write well. But, people can come to me with ideas. People, maybe we could work out something where this show, however often you do it, once a week, maybe we could run it on Good Morning Wilton, so it gets to a wider audience. And that was a lot of the purpose. It's getting more people to know what's happening in Wilton.
You want a lot of people to know what's going on in Wilton, and sometimes it can be hard to get the attention of people. Is there anything you do to get certain people's attention, or just in general people's attention?
It helps that I've been around for 12 years. There was a time when I put magnets with the Good Morning Wilton logo on the side of the car that I drive. And it was the car that I shared with my son, who was a junior and a senior at the time. And he hated pulling into the slot with the magnets on the car. And he was also afraid that someone would take them. So he would drive with them out of the house with the magnets. He would get to the slot, and he would take the magnets off and put them in the car. I graduated to a tire cover on the back. I love Jeeps. I just drive Jeeps. There's a lot of things you can do with marketing. I have sometimes I give to stores and businesses that we've profiled a sticker for their door that says, as seen in Good Morning Wilton. We try and use social media because a lot of people spend their time out on social media. I'm trying to develop that more because I think people are getting their news and finding out about what's happening more on Instagram and TikTok, and a lot of news sites are going there. So I'm going to try and start to do more there. And we encourage people to share the stories. We, encourage people to talk about us. Yesterday, yesterday was Ambler Farm Day, and I did half an hour in the dunk tank. And, I wore my Good Morning Wilton shirt, my Good Morning Wilton hat, and they had me on the chalkboard, and, I was there promoting Good Morning Wilton, but also doing something in the community. So people see me, and I get around to meet people and all of that. And those are some of the ways.
Yeah, and Good Morning Wilton is Wilton's newspaper outlet. So is it hard to keep it strictly Wilton based, or
so
do you have to?
I do have a rule. I do have a rule that it has to happen in Wilton. It has to be about Wilton. It has to be a Wilton person. Because honestly, there are amazing stories outside all around. But for the most part, I'm one person. And I already, sleep about 4 hours a night. So there has to be a line someplace. And really, I think Wilton readers want to know about Wilton. They can get their news about other towns and other things that go on nationally. They can get that out there, someplace else. But I'm the only place that is about Wilton, for Wilton. And so, that's the kind of rule I want to keep. Yeah.
I think that's going to be it for today. Thank you
Okay.
so much for spending the time to come in and
Thanks so much
talk
for
to us.
coming.
It's my pleasure. You guys are great. That you're doing this too. You're getting out to the community. It's awesome.
Thank you. See you guys in the next episode.
Bye.